Hello, I'm Tony Ingold. I run Extra Dimension Solutions. We provide sales advice and tech support for 12D model in New South Wales, the ACT and South Australia. Today I'd like to show you the new tools we have for creating RAMS loader files directly from 12D model. The RAMS asset acceptance spreadsheet first came up on my radar about 3 years ago on a project in northern New South Wales. I got a call from the site with a question: can 12D convert eastings and northings into lat long? And the answer is yes, of course, but why? Oh, we have to punch lat long into this spreadsheet for the RMS. Well, it turned out to be a little more to it than that, as you'll know if you've had anything to do with RAMS. RAMS is the asset database used by Transport for New South Wales for highway assets. To get data into RAMS, the traditional approach has been to use the as-built survey, punch a load of data from that survey into the RAMS spreadsheet, punch a load of other data from wherever else into the RAMS spreadsheet, and generate the loader file from the RAMS spreadsheet. We've come up with new tools and a workflow that'll get you a lot of the data for RAMS generated by 12D. Essentially, you take your as-built survey, you enter any additional attributes that are needed, you use project attributes to populate the entities with things that are on every string. You manually enter any missing attributes. You then validate the data and you generate the RAMS loader file directly from 12D. That's what I'm going to take and show you now. This is the RAMS Asset Acceptance Information Template for Asset Management. If you're involved in contracting in New South Wales, you're likely to have seen this. It's the spreadsheet that the contractor needs to fill out to enter all of the assets that they build for transport for New South Wales on a highway project. The assets are divided into 4 groups here. We have corridor assets, pavement assets, guidance delineation, and intelligent transport systems. Today we're going to take a look at a corridor asset. We're going to take a look at a culvert. Now I have a culvert entered into the spreadsheet already, so you don't have to watch me punch these numbers in. And what we have here is the construction date, the road number, the lat long of the inlet. Further down here is the lat long of the outlet. We have the inlet side, whether it's in the center of the road or the left or the right-hand side, and the depth of cover at the inlet. The depth of cover at the outlet, we've got a culvert number, it goes on, what type of culvert it is, how many barrels, what material it's made from. If we scroll down just a little bit further, we can see that the spreadsheet is quite intelligent. I've chosen a culvert, which is a box culvert. If I change the culvert type from box to pipe, then the size of the box, the height and width are no longer required, but the pipe diameter is required. If I change it back from a pipe back to a box culvert, then the requirements change again. These red areas indicate the required field, and they change depending on the culvert type. Okay, the box type, the size of box required. We can choose the box type from a drop-down. We can choose precast. Okay, so it's pretty smart. There are also a load of optional attributes, information about the culvert that you can enter, but that you're not obliged to enter. Now, having entered all of this information in one column for one culvert, I want you to imagine someone in a site office having to enter this information for every single culvert that's built on the project. Every culvert has a corresponding column here in the spreadsheet. And as well as culverts that need to enter all of the drainage pits, all of the safety barriers, all of the safety ramps, open drains, curbs, gutters, road pavements. In fact, all of the assets that will be handed across to transport need to be recorded in the spreadsheet. But the spreadsheet is not an end in itself. The spreadsheet's used to generate a thing called a loader file, which is loaded into the RAMS asset database. So let me show you how the asset loader works, how we create a loader file. We'll come to the spreadsheet, we'll come to add-ins, and we'll export the data. Now, this is corridor data we're looking at. It's a culvert. We're going to export a culvert. We'll have coordinate referencing, and the region number is 471N. Press the button. Now it says that CLVT data has been exported, and it's giving a location on my hard drive. So we'll press OK, and we'll get a message that one record has been exported. And that one record represents the one culvert that's in my spreadsheet in the CLVT part of the spreadsheet. Now, if I go to that folder on my hard drive, there's the file. It's just been created, and I can open it up in Notepad. And this is what the loader file looks like. This is the information that I entered into the spreadsheet presented here in a text file. It's delimited, and it's ready to be loaded into the RAMS database. Now, we were asked by a number of contractors that for a way to get the information from 12D, from the surveyed pickup, into the spreadsheet so that they could produce the loader file. And we spent a lot of time looking at the spreadsheet and looking at 12D and trying to figure out a way that we could store attributes and information inside 12D and then export those out into the RAMS spreadsheet. And in the end, we gave up. We decided that it was just too difficult and too likely to be error-prone to try and generate some sort of CSV file from 12D that you could open in Excel and then copy-paste into the RAMS spreadsheet to then generate the loader file. We figured that the operators would be spending more time correcting mistakes in the spreadsheet that they pasted from 12D, and they'd be better off just punching the numbers in to start with. So right about the same time that we were doing this, we got a sneak preview of some work that Paul Hardwick was doing. Paul's part of the 12D development team at Brisbane. And a big shout out to Paul, because the MetaConnex tools that he's created makes the operator's task way easier than we expected, and it made our task way easier than we expected. MetaConnex allows us to set up some business rules and apply those business rules to the as-built survey data. The business rules in this case are the attributes that need to be on the string prior to them being exported to a RAMS loader file. MetaConnex also allows us to generate attributes on a string from project attributes. Attributes that are stored as part of the project can be pushed down to the string using MetaConnex. We're also able to create attributes by calculation. Things that are inherent in 12D, like the length of a string, can become an attribute on this string. It also makes it very easy to add attributes manually when you're back in the office. Now, for instance, RAMS requires us to have a latitude and longitude stored for each end of the string. We have the easting and the northing, yes, and we have tools here under the survey menu in 12D that'll calculate the lat and long from the easting and northing. But that's tedious and it's time consuming and it means a bunch of copying and pasting. What MetaConnex does is calculates that information automatically and stores it. That is, it stores the lat long as an attribute on the string. Let's start off by taking a look at the business rules stored in the MetaConnex file. Okay, so this is the MetaConnex file. These are the business rules for RAMS. And if you recall, when I showed you the spreadsheet had corridor assets, it had pavement assets, guidance and delineation, and intelligent transport systems. Well, surprise, we have the same classifications in the RAMS business rules. Now, most of the guys on my team have been busy punching these business rules into the MetaConnex file. We've got pavement assets, we've got our guidance and delineation, we've got intelligent transport systems, and all of the assets and all of the requirements from the spreadsheet and from the RAMS manual have been reproduced here in this MetaConnex file. And the one that I want to take a look at is culvert. Now, we looked at culvert in the spreadsheet, and here it is, and we're going to start off and take a look at the project information. Now, for project info, we need the project number, and that's one of the attributes that we'll generate from a project attribute. The entire project has the same number, every one of the assets has that project number, and there's no need to enter it again and again. Okay, so we'll go and take a look at the project attributes in a second, but before we do, here's the region, and that's going to be generated from a project attribute as well. The entity type is always going to be CLVT, and that attribute is stored automatically. And here is the construction date, and once again, this will come from a project attribute. Some of the other information at the inlet latitude, that's generated by MetaConnex using the code that you can see here for the vertex, and we've also punched in a maximum and minimum allowable values. If it falls outside of these values, then it's not valid. Similarly, the inlet longitude is calculated, and here's the MetaConnex code for length stored under dimensions, and the length is calculated by MetaConnex from the string, and it's stored as an attribute. Okay, so you can see that the business rules stored in MetaConnex are crucial to being successful in operating the export workflow. The XDS team have all worked on this MetaConnex file. We used the spreadsheet, we used the RAMS documentation. The RAMS doco looks like this. Here's a listing of the required attributes for a culvert. Unfortunately, like most computer documentation, the code, that is the spreadsheet, sometimes gets ahead of the documentation. We used the spreadsheet as a final check that we had the right attributes. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Niall Brady for his assistance in explaining just exactly what was required for RAMS, especially for some of the more complex entities. Right, let's go take a look at the project attributes. They're found here under Project Utilities Attributes. And here in a group called RAMS, we've got 4 attributes that we've created in here, just as an example. Here we have the project number, the region, the commissioning date, and the reason. Okay, so we expect these 4 attributes to appear on our culvert, and in fact on all of the strings in 12D that we process using the MetaConnex tools. So far we've got 2 places that we're getting attributes from. That is from the project attributes and from the calculated attributes. And these are calculated from the physical dimensions or the location of the string. The third place we get attributes from is the survey pickup. The surveyor gets to do some work out in the field, they know that they're coding for RAMS, and they need to collect 1 or 2 extra things when they do the as-built survey. We're expecting here that some of the information that's picked up is going to be RAMS specific, and the surveyor will need to know what needs to be collected for RAMS, or have that stored in a code list so that they're prompted for it. In this example, the surveyor has picked up the barrel type and the inlet side and the outlet side. That is, they picked up whether the inlet is on the right-hand side or the inlet is on the left-hand side, and they've entered that in the field during the survey. But again, these are just examples. The surveyor may be asked to pick up a lot more attributes, and the requirements will depend on what's being surveyed. On one of the projects we're working on with a contractor, the surveyor doesn't collect any RAMS attributes at all. These are all added later in the office. Because the office is the 4th place where attributes can be added, and they need to be added in the office by someone prior to generating the LOS file that goes into RAMS. And fortunately, you've got some great tools with MetaConnex that'll firstly check that the attributes exist, and secondly, to help you generate those attributes that don't. It's a great tool that helps you populate attributes based on the business rules. Right, so let's take a look at a couple of the MetaConnex tools. I'm going to first of all run the MetaConnex apply. This is going to do the work of taking the attributes, the project attributes, and it's going to push them down to the string. It's also going to do any calculations that have been asked, and it's going to generate attributes and apply them to the string as well. Now we're working with just 1 string, and this MetaConnex file with the business rule that we looked at a moment ago. We simply hit the button that says apply, and then we finish. Now let me show you the attributes on the string, and you'll see that we have quite a few more than we had a moment ago. Now we have the latitude and longitude of the inlet. We have the invert level, we have the length of the culvert. These are all generated by MetaConnex from the surveyed data. We see the information from the survey is still there, and we now have collected the information, and the information has been pushed down from the project attributes. That's gone part of the way to generating the attributes that are required before we create the loader file that goes out to RAMS. And so far that's been pretty painless. The final place to go to add these attributes before we export to RAMS is via the manual entry of the attributes. And we do that using the RAMS validate panel. And what this will do is it'll take a look at the RAMS MetaConnex business rules. It'll take a look at the attributes we have on the string, and it'll compare the attributes from the file with what exists on the string. And if there are any missing, it will tell you, hey pal, time for you to start work, time for you to punch something in. So let me show you the MetaConnex validate panel. We'll choose the string, we'll choose the business rules. Okay, and in this panel we have 4 tabs here. 1, if there's no matching code. That is to say where there's a code in the survey and there's no matching business rule for that code. Unfortunately, there's nothing here, and that's just fine. Now we have a tab to show invalid attributes. That's where we've got an attribute on the string, but the value of the attribute doesn't match the business rules in the MetaConnex file. That is, it's not a valid value to go out to RAMS. Here we have the optional attributes, and if you cast your mind back to the spreadsheet, remember some of these fields were red, they had to be filled out, and some of them weren't, and they were the optional attributes. This tab lists any optional attributes that you haven't filled out. Well, I take the view that they're optional, and I'm not concerned at present. And finally, here are the missing mandatory attributes. These are the equivalent of the red fields inside the spreadsheet, where these are the attributes that have to be collected. Now we're going to hit the validate button. So let's take a look and see that there are no matching codes. That's all okay. How about if there are any invalid values? Well, so far so good. Any missing optional values? Well, you can be sure that there are 1 or 2 values that are optional that you haven't entered, and sure enough, these are the optional ones. If you want to go back into 12D and add them in, feel free, you're most welcome, but if you don't, that's just fine. The RAMS loader file will still load. But missing mandatory is more of a concern. These are the attributes that need to exist before our loader file is going to be going into RAMS OK. And we can look at these here and we can see the attributes that are missing. 12D shows us the entity that they're missing on, We only have one string, and there it is. Okay, so let's go and set some attributes. These are the ones we have to do by hand. Here, under the Missing Attributes tab, let's take a look at what's missing. We haven't entered the invert depth for we haven't entered the depth of cover for the inlet. We haven't entered the depth of cover for the outlet. The number of pipes, the diameter, the culvert number, the culvert type, or the buffer. Let's go and put these in. At the bottom of the list, we've got a little tab that says Click to Edit, and this is gold. This panel allows us to add and edit attributes, and we're prompted for the attributes based on the MetaConnect business rules. So let's work through these. The inlet depth of cover, that's going to be under inlet, and there it is under depth of cover, and from our surveyor's notes, it's 500 millimeters, depth of 0.5 meter. Same for the outlet, depth of cover, 0.5 meter. Number of pipes, that'll be under the dimensions. Number of pipes, there it is, there's just one of them, so we punch in 1. Inside diameter, 1.2 meters. Culvert number, that'll be under details, culvert 123 3015. The culvert number is the number given to you by the transport asset team. Culvert type, pretty much certain that this is a pipe. And the buffer, we come to the top here, and we punch in a buffer that'll give it a buffer of 50 meters, and process those and close. And once again, we validate the culvert. It's looking good on the missing attribute values there. Missing optional still has some invalid values, and it looks like we have a problem with invalid values. What's the problem here? My inside diameter, 1.2, is outside the range. Well, I reckon it's meant to be measured in millimeters, and I've made the mistake of punching it in meters. So let me hit Click to Edit, and we'll come back into dimensions, change that 1.2 to 1200, process that, and then validate again. Happy days, finish the panel, and we can generate the loader file for this culvert. Now to create the loader file, we use a macro in 12D. So let's come here to the RAMS menu and let's choose Write Loader File. We've just got one string to export, so I'll click on the string button and choose just that one culvert string. We type in a project name and we can set the location where the file is saved. Then we simply press the button that says Create Files and the loader file will be created. The file has been created in the working folder for the project, and here it is. We'll open it in Notepad in exactly the same format that we saw generated from the spreadsheet. And this file can be loaded into RAMS. There's just one culvert in this file, and of course in a real job there'd be a bunch more, but this file will go quite happily into RAMS exactly as if it was generated from the spreadsheet. I want to come back now and show you a little bit more about the RAMS, about the MetaConnects file. We've been asked a few questions about this, about how it works, and the questions are mainly around coding and around field procedures. So let me open up that RAMS MetaConnects editor to take a look at an example. We'll hit read to load it into the editor, and we're going to look at culvert again. Well, the first question I get asked is, do we have to code it for RAMS? Do we have to change our coding schemes? And no, you don't. In this particular coding scheme, the culvert is coded DCOS. When we write the loader file using our macro, we write CLVT into the loader file regardless of the code that you've used. And what we're expecting is that people will use their existing code library and add any prompts for any attributes that they need to collect for RAMS in the field, and they'll simply tell 12D what code that they've used for culvert. Now, the only problem you'll have is if there are many strings coded, in this case DCOS, and some are going into RAMS and some are not. In this project, we have a number of strings for every culvert that are coded DCOS, and only one of those strings needs to be exported to RAMS. We certainly don't want to generate a loader file for every one of those strings. So what we can do here is to use an attribute. We add an attribute here in the business rules, and something like RAMS is going to work as good as anything. And now RAMS will only process things that have got that attribute on the string. So you can code it DCOS, and if it doesn't have that attribute on the string, it won't be processed by the loader file. In this case, therefore, the surveyor would go out to survey the culvert, and at this point, you can code whatever you like, DCOS will work, but at this point at the start of the culvert, we'd suggest you code it with an attribute that says, this is the first point on what's going to be a RAMS asset. The other question I've asked is whether this file should be used inside 12D field, inside 12D field pickup, and the answer is an emphatic no. While it looks very much like a 12D field code list, and it has its origins in a typical code list, I wouldn't be asking the surveyor to go out into the field to take a shot on the culvert and enter all of these attributes. This is not a job for out in the field. which is what would happen if you try to use this code list as a field code list. As you've seen, many of the attributes go onto the string from project attributes, and many of them can be calculated by 12D. And we only need to enter the attributes in the field, which can be added most conveniently in the field. If this workflow for generating RAMS loader files from 12D would be useful to you, then please contact me, Tony Ingold, at Extra Dimension Solutions. If you need to know anything else about 12D, feel free to contact me, but you can also contact 12D on the email at the email address on the screen. Thanks a lot.